I'm Kevin from Coborn's. We are out here at the Syrup Ranch today in Bowlus, Minnesota. I'm here with Mike. He is the owner of the Syrup Ranch. They bottle our wonderful Four Brothers maple syrup. Very delicious. Hey, thanks so much for spending some time with us today.
Thanks for coming out. Glad to have you.
We're beginning that process right now of tapping those maple syrup trees. Tell me a little bit about that process and how it all works.
Typically, we like to tap up shoulder height, and I keep my lines up a little higher for deer and any other animals to go under. That way I'm not picking up lines off the ground. We want to pick the south side of the tree. That's where the sun hits and starts the sap going upward. And that sap right now is trying to reach the buds of the tree. And then when it freezes back at night, it goes back down. So it just continues that cycle until the ground thaws out and reaches the right temp for the buds to start popping. Then we got to stop making syrup because the sap becomes buddy tasting and it produces an off flavor. We're going to angle our drill back slightly. That way, when it freezes at night, before it freezes, the sap will run out of the hole and it won't freeze in there. And just drill in, put the tap in the hole, seat it in there. We just come here with a hammer and give it a little snug till it stops. That one's properly seated.
How much syrup does one tree usually yield?
That varies. Roughly 10 gallons of sap you'll get, so that's about 2 pints.
So we've made it to the pumping area now here at the Syrup Ranch, and this is really kind of the driving force behind everything, what gets the syrup moving, right, Mike?
Yep, the pumps automatically start up and put this tank under vacuum. As it's coming in, there's a receiver pump inside there, and that's on a float, so it constantly, when that gets filled up, it's going to pump it through this hose and it's going to send it all the way back about 560 feet up that way back to the sugar house.
All right, so now we've came to the bottling room here at the Syrup Ranch in Bowlus, and I know, Mike, right now things aren't fully operational at this point yet, but let's go ahead and just talk about some of the machinery that you've got here in this room.
First, our sap comes into there, it's pumped. We have an RO system, and then after the RO, it's pumped up to that tank up on top, and it's gravity fed, controlled through a float on our big pan in the back, and it goes through a preheater on top. Once it goes through the preheater, it fills the pan. Then it comes through another float on the front pan, and it mazes through 4 dividers in here. And on that side, we have an automatic draw-off, which is probed in there taking the temperature. So when that temperature reaches, I have it set at roughly 216.5. It automatically will open a valve up and it's going to put it in this finishing pan where I finish the syrup off to the correct density on the hydrometer. It's then ready to go into the filter press, which removes all the sugar, sand, and any other impurities in the syrup that's produced through the boiling process. After it goes through the filter press, we put it right in drums and goes into storage from there.
Tell me just a little bit, too, about the history of the Syrup Ranch.
We started off in 2009. I actually was laid off that spring from my job. And walking around out here, I'm like, well, I got all these maples. I should try maple syrup, you know. So I tried that, and I just had 12 of these trees strung up right here. And I had them on pails at the time, and there was a little more snow than this, and I had a wheelbarrow and I was carrying it back here, and it was just treacherous. And after that, I said, oh, this ain't bad. So then the next year I doubled. I ended up doing 24 trees, and I got a bigger cooker and everything, and it just kept getting a little bigger. And I met a guy out in Wisconsin, and he did it commercially. That's all he did for a living. I got to know him, and he approached me, and he said he's going to be retiring, and he asked me if I'd be interested in his equipment. And I says, oh, your equipment, that's way too big. I said, I'll never get that big. And he says, well, I'll tell you what, he says, if you're going to jump in, jump all in, he said. So we ended up building a shed and getting inspected by the Minnesota Department of Ags for all their qualifications they needed. And then 2014, we entered our syrup in the Minnesota State Fair. And after that, we took first place in all 3 grades. And just like that, it snowballed from there.
Mike, thank you again so much for having us out here today.
Yeah, thanks for coming, and glad you guys could make it.
Really do appreciate it. And of course, you can pick up that syrup from the Syrup Ranch right here in Bowlus, Minnesota at all of our family of stores.